Yeah, absolutely. So currently I am the CEO and co-founder of the FOXG1 Research Foundation. And what that entails is a little bit of everything, but mainly thinking about our scientific strategy. How are we looking for different therapies for our diverse population? How do we think about fundraising, which is obviously a huge thing in rare diseases? How do we think about programs to help our families? And really just being the center for this disease, a center for both science and family caregiving. That's right. It's very personal. I have my daughter, Amara, is now 6 years old. She was diagnosed when she was 9 months old after she started having seizures. And that really took me down this path. And, I think this is very typical. I was an entrepreneur before, and it's really looking, I don't have a scientific background, never even knew what a gene was until this happened to my daughter. But to me, it's like every entrepreneurial challenge, there's a problem, and it's, you can figure out a solution. So it's very personal for me. There was very little research done on FOXG1 syndrome when she was diagnosed. There were only about 300 patients even known in the world at the time. Now we're up to 1,000. And when I started speaking to biopharmaceutical companies, it seemed like there was hope because of everything that the US government and the FDA has created in terms of incentives for companies to focus on rare diseases. But there was a lot of work that was necessary in order for us to even get to that point with organizing our patients, understanding the clinical history, doing like just proof of concepts to see what could work, creating our assets, our mouse models, animal models, our cell lines, understanding the neurobiology of the disease. Pharma is not going to invest in a disease where the biological kind of just the mechanisms aren't well understood. So all of that work was, to me, just, it's a challenge and we have to figure out how to do it. And so it's very personal. I was extraordinarily fortunate that there were other parents who had children with this disease that I bonded together with, and, our family to me, and built the foundation with me. So it's definitely been a group effort. Well, it's a little bit of both, to be honest. I think for some modalities and treatments, we're closer. So we have a major small molecule screen going, and I'm really hopeful something will come out of that. We have some very early promising results from our antisense experiments and some gene therapy experiments. So I think those are going to be more midterm. And then there's a couple institutions that are looking at gene editing for FOXG1, and that's, of course, longer term. And so I don't think there's going to be a magic cure. It's going to be, I think most of our kids are going to have multiple therapies in their lives, they're already on multiple drugs right now. So it's really, and that's why this will be lifelong. Most companies, when founders start companies, my previous companies, it was always like, okay, I'm going to start this company and I'll probably exit at some point, right? But there's no exiting here, because even when we find therapies, it's going through clinical trials, it's helping patients get the treatments. Like we're in it for life. Well, we are about to start our first clinical trial at NYU, which we're very excited about, for a repurposed drug that's shown, really steady progress for uncontrollable seizures and similar conditions. So that's our first trial, and that's going to be a great experience for us. And otherwise, in the other modalities, I would say that we're not that far away. We're maybe 1 to 3 years away from a clinical trial. Absolutely. My career has been varied, and I think everything I've done, I've never had the background to do it. And I've learned through those experiences that you don't have to know everything. Actually, as an entrepreneur, the most important thing is putting the pieces of the puzzle together and having a strategy and having a vision. So that's really critical. The other piece is you can find people that have deep expertise in the specific areas that are necessary. So my first startup was actually in India, where I started a company. This was during the outsourcing boom, if you remember those days. And there was a lot of outsourcing happening in India and the Philippines, et cetera. So I had created a program basically to train young people in India. And so that was a lot of fun. I had no background in that, and I just saw an opportunity and jumped in on it. My background is in finance, and I started my career in investment banking, and left that after a couple of years. So that was my first company. And then I ended up getting quite involved in education and seeing how technology could help education, and moved to Microsoft and did a lot of work in ed tech at Microsoft, and then saw an opportunity and started a company called Schooly that looked at education, public education in the United States. And that was a fantastic experience. We had an exit there. So I had thought at that point that, look, I'm really digging deep into ed tech, and that's going to be where I build my career. And then of course I had my third child, and she started having seizures, and then, that's life for you. It just takes you in a different direction. But I think the same entrepreneurial lessons that I had learned in the former two companies have been so helpful. I mean, it's almost like everything kind of culminated for me to be able to do this successfully, if that makes sense. All my other learnings have come together to make this possible. It's funny because I came from tech, which is predominantly male. And before that it was finance, which was even worse. And so I have been really, because of that, I have been amazed at how many neuroscientists there are that are women. So that have found very illuminating. Neurologists, neuroscientists, it almost feels like it's a 50-50. And I think that's fantastic. But when I think about biotech companies, when I think about the people leading biotech companies, I can only think of one woman I know that started and is running a biotech company. Everyone else is a man. So I don't think it's anywhere near, equal. It certainly seems like it's better perhaps than high tech, but I think we still have a long way to go. So, I've always tried to take things that are, I'm a woman, I'm, not Caucasian. And so but I've never, in some ways you can stand out more and you can use that to your advantage. I think the hardest part is not so much being a female, it's being a mother. I think once you start having children, things get much more difficult. And we always talk about how there's so few women at the C-suite. And, in corporate America, and the reason isn't because women can't get there, don't want to get there. It's because the sacrifice, what you have to give up is too high, right? So in terms of family balance, and it's because of the structure of corporate America is still very kind of how we started in the industrial period, right? With like working from 8 to 5. And that works when you have a man working from 8 to 5 and there's someone at home taking care of everything, right? It just doesn't work anymore with two, co-parenting, two like people working in the same relationship. So I think a lot of the structure has to change with how we think about structuring the workday, how we think about bringing children to work. Even at my, startup, like I'll always bring my kids to work. And it's just, and that's working from home. In some ways, COVID has been amazing because you could be a good parent and still do your job. And so I don't think it's so much being female. I do think it's something about being a parent. And I see more and more men struggling with this now because the society is changing and men are now doing much more with their children and are expected to do more and want to do more. And so I think it's more of a family thing. How do you have balance in a family and are a good parent and still can take your career forward? Absolutely. One is just my friends, right? All of us are kind of at the same level in our careers. We all have children. We're all struggling and balancing, and we're very grateful for everything that we have, actually, that we have the ability to even have these challenges, right? So I think there's a lot of, we're grateful for that. So I find a lot of solace in talking to them and working through problems and different situations. Also women mentors, women that are further ahead than me in their careers. What have they done? How have they, dealt with different things? And I remember when I was an investment banker, it was, and even in tech, you cannot show any emotion. It's just it's a negative thing, right? And now I think with more women stepping up, it's like, actually, human beings are emotional creatures. It's okay to show emotion, right? And I think the more women you talk to, you start to realize that you don't have to be a different type of person to be successful. You could actually be exactly who you are and be very successful. And so I have mentors who don't even know that they're my mentors, right? It's just women who are successful that I read about. I listen to their podcasts, fills me with a lot of inspiration. I think we all need someone that we can look up to, that we think we can get there. So I don't see a big gender gap in science, but I do see the gender gap again in business. So one is just investing in more women, right? There's funds that are now predominantly focused on women entrepreneurs. And why is that? It's because still the majority of venture capital funds, majority of angel funds tend to veer towards a male founder. So the huge thing is capital. I mean, it's impossible to start a business without capital, without support, without network. So I would say if we want to close this gap, number one is we need more funding for women entrepreneurs. And number two, we need to really as a society start rethinking what is a successful working week look like? What does success mean? What is a different model for working? It's still the workplace is so categorized in a male sphere. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And there's companies like Primary, which is male-founded company. They have a 4-day work week, and they, do a different type of structure that enables you to have a family and still work and still be as productive. So it's rethinking a lot of our structures. That's so true. I mean, getting more women on boards. Exactly. I mean, it's so much of this, and women have tended to be the ones that don't take risks. I mean, to be a founder, you have to take a risk. There is a high chance you're going to fail. And most women aren't still okay with that, right? And maybe because your husband is also taking a risk. So you feel like I should be the one that's not taking a risk in my family. So a big thing, and I have this conversation with my own husband all the time, is, for women to change, men have to change, right? Like, a man has to do half of the stuff at home if it's going to be possible for a woman to be successful at work. Like, the man's career can't always be, and women, when they have children, there could be a few years where you're not able to push ahead and your husband's able to push ahead. And then you get in a situation where it's like, oh, well, your husband's making more money than you, so it makes sense for them to continue. And then you get in this, and then you're so far behind that, and therein you see kind of the chasm. So a lot of it is also partners understanding that two people deserve to have a successful career, and two people deserve to take different risks in their career. So a lot of it is risk taking with being an entrepreneur. I was just in New York at the Women's Entrepreneurship Day organization, and they had a summit at the United Nations. And it was a group of women doing totally different things than I'm usually a part of, since my world is really now based in science. And I was amazed at how much kind of passion, but again, doing things in their own way. Something very, very superficial I can give you as an example is, throughout my career, I've always worn like suits wherever I go, or dark clothes, or like looking very professional. And I go to this event, and all these women are highly successful wearing like purple dresses and, whatever they want. And I just felt, wow, there's a whole new world emerging where you can be exactly who you are and just be good at what you're doing. And there are communities that will support you if you're positive and willing to take a risk. So to me, I think there's a lot out there. And I think as a woman, you have two options. One, you can kind of feel bad for yourself that, oh my gosh, there's not enough women and this is happening and that is happening. Or we can just look, society's changing. We're part of that change. Let's do our best. Let's mentor other women. Let's help other women and get the help we need. And also look to men. There's a lot of men that understand that it takes two people. So I'm excited. I don't look at this as a terrible chasm. I think we're changing society slowly, and it's amazing.